Okay, let's get started. Welcome to all the attendees and welcome to Chantal. My name is Garland Colson. I work with PresentationPoint, and this is our first ever Presentation Ideas Conference. So over the next while, we are going to be providing you with a series of webinars, on 8 different topics relating to PowerPoint and relating to presenting. The first session will be starting now. Chantal will be presenting for us. She is a PowerPoint MVP and a TEDx speaker coach and has a Woman in Public Speaking podcast. And today she's going to share with us a feature that I really haven't used much in PowerPoint, so I'm looking forward to it, PowerPoint's Zoom feature. So Chantal, I'm going to pass this over to you. I'll just shut down my microphone and my video, and you can start sharing your screen.
Sure. Let's share it like this. Okay, now it's working. So yes, thank you, Garland, and thank you everyone for being here. We'll be, talking about audience engagement with PowerPoint's Zoom feature. And I would like to start with asking, why audience engagement is important. Well, I would like to say that as human beings, we have around 100 billion neurons that are responsible for all sensory activities in our body and brain. And Garland, I do have a quick question for you. How many neurons do you think we need to stimulate to keep audience engagement?
I have no idea.
That's interesting. Well, my business partner has worked with neuroscientists in a university in Montreal, and they did test and start to have a look at how they could mix and match neurostimulation versus attention. And it does look like a minimum of 45 to 60 billion neurons are required to be stimulated so we keep the audience's attention for a decent period of time, which means that we do have to stimulate more than one sense if we want to keep them alive in front of us. And of course, when the audience realizes that you can navigate easily through your content, that's when they start to engage more. That's when they start to ask more questions. And on the other hand, when you're running out of time, you don't have the control of your content, especially if it's linear. And that's usually how it happens, that you risk flipping through all your slides in a hurry to make sure that you will be arriving at the end on time. And that's not always a winning situation. And that's what I've learned in the past, 14 years now since I created my business in presentations and visual communications. And of course, as Garland mentioned, as a TEDx coach, speaker coach, and Microsoft PowerPoint MVP, I've been able to see a lot of these events going on and see that we've had problems with audience engagement before. In previous tools, we had better ways to do it in terms of hyperlinks and custom shows and triggers. A mix and match of all of these was giving us the chance to create more engagement in our presentations. They are great tools, but I must say it did take a lot of dedication and structure and time to make it work. And that's now another thing with PowerPoint in Office 365 and Office 2019, because they have put 3 new features, they call them zooms. In terms of differences, we have the summary zoom, the section zoom, and the slide zoom, which gives you a chance to create more engaging and flexible presentations. And in short, they just allow to create nonlinear content in a very efficient way. So what I'll do, I will introduce them quickly, and then afterwards I'll do a demo, and we'll just go live in PowerPoint so you have the chance to see how it works and how it's done. And if there are any urgent questions, Garland will be having a look, and just let me know, Garland, if there's anything. So if we start with the summary zoom, people that want to know in the menus, it's insert menu, zoom, summary zoom. You'll get a menu slide like you have right now. And as a matter of fact, that's a thumbnail of one of my own training material that we have the thumbnails giving access to all the sections in my file. Then we do have the section zoom, which gives you the chance to select a specific section in your presentation to which you want to link. So when you create that, you're able to just quickly click on one of the sections, creates a thumbnail, and you can place it, resize it, and then just use it on whatever slide that you put it on. And the last one is the slide zoom. So it's same type as the section zoom, except that it's only one slide. So you can have, let's say, hidden material in your content that you will have that thumbnail on specific slides, which would give you access to extra material. That could be very, very interesting if you plan on having very difficult questions during your presentation and you want to have some extra content that goes with it. So I'll just go out of the slideshow mode, and we'll start with this one. Okay. In this presentation, you have right now what we call the summary zoom. And when you click on it, you go to a specific, hold on. I have a technical glitch right now. I'll just let it go for a little bit. It seems that it's lagging. Hold on. Okay, looks like effectively we're having a little glitch. I'm so sorry. So I'll start this again. Okay, let's start this again. Okay, we're back. So, as I was saying, on this one, you have the 4 thumbnails, and they are sections to which I am linking. If I click on it, I link to the section. In this case, it's only one slide. When I'm clicking, I go back, and I can do this for all the slides. If you have a look at this one, this is a smaller thumbnail to another section in my file. If I click on it, I go to that section, and then I can go through, again, some other material. This time, though, I'm linking to slides. So if I click on this one, I'm linking to a particular slide to which I could have extra material to talk to. When I click, I'm going back to the last Zoom that I had created. It's the same for all 3. So if I go through them, you have all 3 information. Then I could click again for that extra section if I want to. So it's a matter of flipping through all the sections and the slides, and I want to show you how it's done. So we'll go back into the normal view, and I'll show you the first. This is the actual file I was showing you. So as you can see, you have a summary section, and then you have all the sections in the file to which I was linking. Now we'll just go to, and since everything crashed, let's go to this one. Okay, this is how we start this. To create a summary Zoom, you don't even need to create your sections before you start anything. What you'll do, you go to Insert, Zoom, Summary Zoom. That is when you will decide what slides will be used as the first of your section. For my example, it's It will be very simple. I'll just use the first 4. This one I'll reserve for later because I don't want it in my summary Zoom. As you saw, it was something else. So let's insert. It creates with the layout that you had. So the first thing I'll do, I'll go change the layout, put it blank, and you have like a huge shape that has grouped all the thumbnails. So that's the summary Zoom. You can resize it, and as soon as you click on it, look at the Zoom tools. Format. This is where you get to make some tweaks and some changes to your Zoom tools. So return to Zoom, by default, it will be checked. This is what allows you to navigate towards the section and come back to this Zoom. Zoom transition is that zooming effect that we saw during the transitions. And if it's without Zoom transition, what you could see, if I just go back, then you click, you don't have the zooming, which might be interesting in some cases, but that's for you to decide what would be best for you. So if we click on it to have it back, edit summary. If you decide you change your mind, you could come back and just delete a section. Then you update your summary Zoom with everything that you want. Update again. If you decide that you want to change the placement because you have some other logos, and as we do often when we create presentations, we realize, maybe that's not what I wanted to do. That reset layout just puts them back in place, and you don't have to fuss with the placement of all the thumbnails. Another interesting feature, that change image, is if you select one, you could decide that you go to change image with either online pictures, icons, or a file on your computer. That means that you could have a different effect for the thumbnail than the slide that you are linking to. So that is how you create the summary Zoom, and you have had the chance to see how it interacts with the other slides. What I want to show you now is how we create section Zooms. And unless, Garland, you have any urgent questions or anything regarding the summary Zoom, I'll just proceed with the section Zoom. So let's say on this slide, if you remember well, I'll just pull back the other one. On my original presentation, the final one, I had that small little thumbnail here that gave me access to extra content. So to create it, when you're on the slide and you want access to an extra section of your content, you will again go to Insert, Zoom, Section Zoom, and then you decide which one you want. So let's say on this one, I would like to go to my last section, section 5. So I'll insert. I can just put it in the corner, resize it. And as you probably remember, I had the thumbnail on the various slides. I had it for this one and this one too. So if you click Control-C to copy, and you go back on number 4, Control-V, as you see, look at the top, Zoom tools, you still have that section Zoom in there. So you're saving time. You can put it back here again if you want, giving you an access to the same material. In this case, I did choose the wrong section. Let's do this again. I forgot this one. Let's add a section for the last one. So I'll call it my slide Zoom. I'll show you how to do slide Zooms later on, but let's go back and we'll just delete this one. We'll insert again the section Zoom. Choose this one, insert, and then I'll copy paste to the last one. So section zooms could be really, really interesting if you are, for example, doing training with a live audience, and you might have some extra material that you want to show if you have extra questions. So that's the way that you can get access to extra material. Questions you think you might have, but you probably don't want to show because you wouldn't have time. And as you can see, if we go just back a second to this summary zoom, the fact that you have access to all your sections right on the first slide, you're not in any obligation to go through them one by one. You could decide you go on your last section if you want to start with it. If you want to customize because you realize that the audience does not require everything you thought they would need. So that's another way to do it. I'll just start it over. So we go back. If we click, we're on that zoom. If we click, we go back to the last section. This one will populate with the latest slide information, but if I click, we're going back and we go back to the front zoom. One thing also that is interesting, if you don't want to click on those thumbnails, if you decide to just click and start without clicking on it, the last section you visited, then it will jump to the next one. That's why we can also use the arrows if we want to. So summary zoom, section zooms that we just added. Let me see, there's one more thing. Oh yeah. For your section zoom, something I want to show, especially if you see we're showing a presentation, a slide, and then we're going to a smaller thumbnail. The zooming effect might be a little bit too much if it's too quick. So duration is something I haven't shown you yet. What I'll do, I'll just start here. If you click on it, it goes to that section really quickly. Instead, if we click on the zoom format, then we can go and let's put 2.5 seconds. That should do it. Look at the difference. When you click on it, it doesn't move as quickly. So that is something that you need to take into account. Depending on your audience, they might not like it if everything zooms and moves too quickly. So test it out when you create those zooms and you know that you'll be starting from a large slide going to a small thumbnail. It actually zooms there. So make it slower if you think it's going to be too quick. So that's a really important one. And copy paste, as I mentioned, don't forget about it. That's a way to save some time and make your life easier.
Chantal, we did have
Yes.
a question in the chat. Dr. Debbie was asking, do you need Office 365 for the Zoom feature? Because she says she has PowerPoint 2016 and it doesn't seem to have the insert Zoom.
Exactly. It doesn't have it. That's why I mentioned Office 365 or the Office 2019, because the newest, let's call it standalone version, for lack of a better word, picked up many of the new features, Zoom being one. So the previous versions will not be able to create Zooms, although they will be able to read them in terms that hyperlinking will still work. You won't have that zooming effect. And another thing important is that you won't be able to have that zooming back, let's say to the summary zoom, which means that if someone creates it on Office 365 and it needs to be played on another version, whether it's 2016 or before, then you need to plan for a back button that would go back to your main slide, which would be slide number 1 in this case. So what I would do in this one, if I know it's going to be played on previous versions, I would probably just go and let's put a little home button right here, and then you link it to the first slide so people have access to it. So that would be the way around, but unfortunately to create it, you need to be at least on Office 365 or the newest standalone version.
Thanks, Chantal. We've got another question from Melody Davis, and she says, can you show a different, or speak to it, to go to a section and move through that section versus back up to the summary Zoom view? How would that work with an advancer while in presentation mode?
Sure. So what we'll do, we'll just add a few slides in here. Slide 1 or slide 2, whatever, as long as we have a couple of slides. Slide 3. So if we go back here and I start it again, we're in the first section. So when we go here and then we move through the slides, slide 2, slide 3, and then I go back to the summary Zoom. Does that answer the question, or is that person need some extra information? Oh, let me go see the chat box. Okay, so that's good. So exactly, my example had only one slide per section, but indeed, the more slides you have, you just go through them, and at the end of the section, you go back to the summary Zoom. And it's the same. If you create like this one, it's another section Zoom. Let's just add another one here. I'll go back here, or let's start from the first one. We'll go here, and then we go to this other section. Remember, I added a slide, so we have a blank slide, and then we go back a notch, and then we're in our slide 2 because we're having that slide 2 in that section. So I hope that clears up the things a little bit, so you can have as many slides as you need in the section. Okay, I'm just having a quick peek at my notes. That's good. So what I'll do now is that I will just go to that slide Zoom section and show you how you can add slide Zooms to your presentations. So it's really a per slide element, which means that you might be on the slide, you just want extra information for a chart or a graph, and you would like to have access to it. I'm keeping that little layout because I think it's interesting to have a different design to it. So if we go to Insert, Zoom, Slide Zoom, let's say that in that section you might need to go back. We'll just do this one. Insert. You can move it. And what is interesting, now we'll go to another feature. Let's go to the Zoom Tools format. One thing I want to make sure I don't forget to tell you, when you insert slide Zooms, you have to go to Return to Zoom. Unfortunately, it's not by default. It's not on by default. You need to put it there if you want to come back to the Zoom after you visited the slide. If it's not the case, no problem, just leave it checked off. But another interesting and very cool feature is Zoom background. Look at it. If you click Zoom background, it removes what you had in the slide master, which means that it does look neat and nice over any graphic elements that you might have. And this can help you build very interesting effects, because you could imagine, right now I have a picture with 3 frames, but you could have a map as your main board, add some slide zooms. If you remove the backgrounds, then you have the effect that you're moving from one to another and you have that map all the time. Now I want to show you another way to create a slide zoom. We did by the insert, but this is really interesting. If you click on one of the thumbnails in the left pane, left click, drag, leave it over the top. Look, you just created another slide zoom. So you can just move it, change it a little bit. Let's go back to remove the slide background, and here you go. So it's as easy as that. It gives you the chance to do it quickly. You don't need to go back to your insert, zoom, and slide zoom all the time. So if we go to this one, zoom background removed, and we'll go back here. And as you can see, when you work on your presentation, look at the slide summary, the summary zoom. Those little thumbnails in the bottom corner, they updated. They update automatically with whatever you did on the slide that you selected. Or in this case, it was a section, but it was the first slide of that section. So if we come back here, start over. Let's say I start on this one. I go back here. I'm going to that last section, but I could move back. This is a slide zoom, so I click, going back to the slide, I click, and I'm coming back to my section. So it's very, very powerful because that means you don't have to only create linear presentations anymore. And you, as you can see, you can mix and match many things in there. Mix and match a summary zoom, which was the first one that we had here. And then you can link to section zooms again, or you can create some slide zooms. So you have the slides per se that can be zoomed in. Okay. One important element right now, I'll just open another presentation to show you something. We'll go to this one, this one. This remove background is good when you do have a slide master with graphical elements and something like that. If you say that you don't want to keep the background and you're using remove background again, but you have a full picture on the slide, that's when you won't have the desired effect. Okay, we've got this. I'll just create a, let's create again. We'll just create a slide zoom. If we go back, remove background, as you can see, only the bottom line, which was in my slide master, is removed. If you have a full slide picture, it doesn't change much, which means that if you want to layer it over, then okay, I would have to tweak it a little bit. You can move it, but there's one important thing that you need to know. Unfortunately, you cannot change the shape of the zoom. So this is a slide zoom. You can resize it if you want, but maybe it doesn't look as nice either, depending on what you have in the background, if you decide that you have a background. And you can always resize it this way, but that's unfortunate because you have a very distorted picture with which does not really look nice. Let's undo this. So what might be interesting in this case is really to just play with some other zoom tools, zoom format tools rather. You could, if you decide that you want to change them, you could have it round, because all that you have in that gallery right now works. So you could change it with the gallery, which is the first stop maybe, depending on how you want it to look. Or you might just decide to change the shape and not have anything in the background, and you just have a new shape and a new formatting of your zooms. So that is one way to do it. There's another way that I found that it is interesting, because I was playing with it, trying to figure, okay, if I want to have a different shape, what are the possibilities? So if we create another one, we have this one that we changed with the gallery styles that we have in there. Another way that might be interesting, if you go into zoom effects, and the soft edges one is really interesting. If you take one of the most, either the 25 or the 50 point, I have a tendency, well, that the two last ones could be nice. So then you're removing a lot of the information that pertain to that large picture on the slide, and you can make it look good over the top of a graphical element. I'll just put this one here, and I'll show you what it looks like afterwards. I do have another trick I want to show you. So this one, and let's use this one, or maybe this one. Let's go back. I'll go back with this one. I have a neat trick with this one. So this one, you could use a change image, and I'll show you what I did. I'll just create another one. Take the same image, so copy, paste. For people that are not familiar with it, you have the remove background tool that might be interesting in some instances. If I use the remove background, when you have all these pink areas, that's what will be removed. You have tools up here, mark areas to keep. So if I want to keep those blocks, you simply put a line on top of what you want to keep. Mark areas to remove. I would remove this one. It changes. You have to tweak it a little bit, but this is good enough. So you keep the changes. And what you can do, right-click the image, save as picture, which I already did in my previous attempts. So I have it right here. I'll just save it over the top. That's okay. I can remove this. I go back here, click on the thumbnail, format, change image. So change image with a file from my computer, navigate to the exact place, insert, and here you go. You already have something that has a neat border to it. You don't have the whole slide. I'll remove this one, and I'll just click and drag so you get this one instead. And I'll show you what it looks like when we start those zooms. Oh, and one thing I almost forgot. We want to return to zoom. So remember, slide zooms, make sure you go check that box because you won't be back to your menu. It does it automatically if you create a summary zoom, but if you're creating by hand because you're just choosing a few slides, you need to go check that box. So if I go in slideshow mode, remember, click this one. I'm getting there. Click, I'm going back. This one, that was with the soft edges. So you go back and you have the full slide. I click. And this one, which I removed most of the background, morphs. It's kind of a morphing picture because from part of it, you get to the full slide. So those are three elements that will help you change the border, change the shape of the zooms. And you have to play with them a little bit depending on what graphical elements you're choosing or you're using. And that would be a way to tweak it, because so far You cannot, and even if you try to right click, you only have to change image again. You don't have the edit points like we have for other shapes that are included in PowerPoint. So for now, Garland, are there any other questions that came in?
There were.
Oh.
So one of them was from Melody again, and she said, if you create a Zoomable presentation, but you use on a system that doesn't have the latest PowerPoint version, would you need to package the presentation to retain the elements?
If you want to retain the zoom effect, by zoom effect, I don't want that. That zooming effect here, if you want to retain that, it would need, and you won't even be able to really package it because it would need to be produced as a video. What will happen in another version, I'll just go back in Zoom. I'll remove the zoom transitions because it will almost reproduce what will happen. So you're in Office 365, you're playing this in, let's say, PowerPoint 2016, PowerPoint 2013. So what will happen, people will be able to click, but they click to get only to the slide. You don't have that zooming effect in between. And when you want to go back, if you're in previous versions, if you click here, right now, you go back to your main slide. It would not do that. That's when you would need, as I mentioned in my other example, let's say we go here, that's where you need to have a visual cue. I'll just put that little home one again, put it here. That's when you need to have that visual cue to go back. So if I start it again, I go here, it would just transition with a soft transition. To go back, I would need to click that little home button. That's how it would work in previous versions. But keeping the zooming per se, it won't be possible because it's not compatible with the coding that you have in previous versions.
And of course, you know, Microsoft wants to build in cool new features that encourage you to upgrade and spend more money, as with any, you know, anybody who's trying to sell you something. So
true, but at least it's not crashing. It won't be crashing. You just need to be aware of those little tweaks that you need to make if it will be used on a previous version.
Now, and there was another question from Myrna, and this was in regards to, I think, the last things you showed us with those last three where you were editing those graphics. And
yes,
she said, can you crop these as an alternative creative?
Well, you're not able to crop the zoom tool per se, because if you look in your formatting, the tools you have to make the change to that zoom thumbnail is what you have here. So you can change the borders, outline, no outline. You can change the effects, 3D, bevels, everything, removing a background and using those zoom styles. You would not be able to crop. If you're cropping an image and then you use that same change image, let's say we use whatever, we'll use this one. This is what it looks like. So you cannot crop from that little piece. That thumbnail that is called a zoom, this one is a slide zoom, cannot be cropped.
Thank you.
Any other questions that you have?
I don't see any in the chat, so everybody, if you've got a question for Chantal about what she's shown you, let us know, or let us know what you thought. I know for myself, I can see all sorts of neat ideas. In the past, I've often built different versions of my presentations based upon how much time I would have, like a 1 hour version,
absolutely,
or an hour version, or a half-day workshop. This would allow me to build it all within one, and I can just go deeper if I've got time, or if people ask questions, or sometimes you have a presentation that finishes earlier because nobody's asking questions, and this would let you call up additional information without trying to seem like you're just trying to pad out the time. So.
Exactly, and that's a really good point, because sometimes I see clients building tons of versions of their content. Even before, if you were using custom shows and hyperlinks and triggers and stuff like that, you could still package and structure your content that you would have only one huge file, and then you can navigate within the file depending on how long you have. And I remember building it was looking like a dashboard for some doctors that were doing trainings, various topics, various lengths, and they had access to buttons that said, okay, if it's topic A for 30 minutes, you go here, we package some slides. And then they had the 60-minute version. They could do it that way. With the Zooms, well, now it just speeds up the process. You need to know how much time you will be taking for each sections, but if you structure your content well, then you'll be able to really package everything, and when you're going away, you have all your content. You don't need the gazillions versions of your content or your presentations to go with.
Another question was somebody had logged in late, got the times wrong, and asked if there would be a replay. And so the idea is, yes, we are recording these, but we aren't promising that the replays will be available just in case there's a technical glitch. But the plan right now is to make them available. Myrna has asking regarding hyperlinks. Hello, not knowing where client will place this section of slides, is there a way to designate next slide +1, next slide +2, etc.?
Well, if you're linking to a section, you're not stuck within that section to have only so many slides. So if I just go back, let's go back to this one. As I mentioned before, when I was adding slides in this section, I could keep adding slides for as much as I want. Let's say we will add, we already have one. Let's add this one. And I'll just add whatever. This is good. I'll add this one. Leave it as it is. So if I go back, it updates what's in here. If I start again my slideshow, right here, I change, I have those slides, look, it updated right away. So you're not stuck. You can expand any section for as much as you want, and it will just keep updating, so your links are still good. And if you're playing this with another version, as we mentioned, then you would still need, at the end of your section, you would need that little home button that goes back to your slide number 1. Does that help?
I think so, hopefully. And now Melody asks, how has this changed your planning of the presentation on the front end, knowing you can do all this?
Well, you know what? I've been doing flexible and interactive presentations for, almost 14 years. I was just doing it the hard way with all the other tools before. So in terms of planning, for me, it's about the same. I always start either on a whiteboard. I have some static paper that I write what I want to cover, put my sections, and I do it all on paper usually. Post-its, cue cards, whatever. You play with it, you group your information in what makes sense, and that's when you start building. And if you already have a lot of content spread out in so many presentations, then just go into file print and do some printouts. Instead of printing the full pages, I usually do the 6 slides, and then I cut them and I play with whatever content I have. It happens especially if I work with client content, because they usually have various versions or they have many presentations. And that's where I start. I make sure that I'm not trying to build and do my structure at the same time. You need to have a clear view of what your structure will be to start with. And then you can just pop in, create your sections before if you want, but as we have seen, creating a summary Zoom creates the sections at the same time, and it really even names the sections with the slide title if you have any.
Great. And Myrna, I think, had a follow-up to her asking about not knowing where the client will place the group of slides. Like she says, hyperlink to non-designated slide number, but I think she's worried the client may shift the section order. So I guess she's worried about doing something for a client and then they move it around and then
if it moves around, if they don't change, let's say the slide title, I would have to check that one. Let's see. If we, let's just move this section. Let's put it at the end. As you can see, it's really at the end right now. We moved it because I haven't tried it before. And sometimes we do have clients doing strange things. So let's do this. Look, it's linking exactly where it should be linking. Section was moved, but I want to try one more thing. Let's say we just change this. I don't know what I hit, but that wasn't the right key. Okay, change the slide title. We'll go back. It updates here. Let's see. No, it's all good. So they can move things around.
Good.
I hadn't tried it. So I'm glad she asked because we tested it live.
Yeah, it is good to find these things out because, I mean, clients are really good. You'll do some amazing presentation for them and then they find a way to break it or something. So.
And you know what? Even the developers at Microsoft, they realize sometimes we come with questions and they say, we never thought users would do that. And that's when we tell them, well, you know what? We've been doing it for years. Haha. So they learn new ways of using the tool that they've built. And sometimes they were clueless about the creative ways that we would be using it.
Well, and I find that all the time with our clients at PresentationPoint as well, that we give them tools and then they go out there and do something incredibly unusual with it. We go, wow, we never thought of that, but is that ever cool?
Exactly. There are various ways to make these things happen. It's really cool.
Well, I think that's the end of the questions we had in chat, Chantal. So thank you so much for your presentation.
Exactly. And you know what? The summary Zoom, section Zoom, slide Zooms, please do play with them if you can. And as you can see, it doesn't bite. It's not that complicated. And people can get a hold of me by these ways if they need to have some questions answered.
That was going to be my next question, is how do people do it? So, awesome.
So yeah, I hope it will be useful. And please consider it because it's a very efficient way to engage audiences way more than with linear presentations.
Well, and I love it. I mean, I know there's other tools out there called like Prezi that do
yes.
Similar things. A lot of people move to that because they found PowerPoint boring, but PowerPoint's just so powerful and so well used that this gives you that kind of flexibility, but without having to change and try to learn a brand new tool. So.
That too, and it's portable. It probably more compatible if you're using it with people that have other versions of PowerPoint and going out with a Prezi tool that not as many people use. So it's a way, I think they adapted pretty well in the past few years to put in new features that would fit more what users were asking for in terms of new things that they were seeing with the new software that came out there.
Well, great. Well, thanks so much for sharing this with us, Chantal. And
my pleasure.
I look forward to future presentations with you.
Thank you very much. So have a great day, everyone.
Okay.